Started?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
can go.
So hi again, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your interest in low code and no code applications. And what we are going to be doing today. So first of all, my name is Alex. I am honored to guide you through a little bit of what is Ninox and what is low code and no code today. And then I'll hand over to Niels, who will guide you through the practical part and show you everything about how to use the platform and what can be done in a practical example rather than just theory. And maybe I can start sharing my screen for you to see what we're up to and what we're planning for the day. So we have about 60 minutes ahead of us, maybe a little bit short of 60 minutes. So we have time for your questions and answers and, or I guess your questions that we'll be answering. And we'll do our best to answer them probably at the end. So stick around so that we can get through the content before, and then stick around for the answers. But feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. Okay, so what we'll be doing first, we'll be speaking about the next 20-ish minutes. We'll be doing three things: the digitization and challenges in your everyday work, and why that's important. We're going to be then talking about what is low code and no code, and why it's important for your work. Why is it useful for your work? We'll then go through three specific success stories, how companies that have had struggles in their processes have then adapted low code and no code application in their process to optimize the process and get benefits out of it, mostly time saving and cost saving, and making less mistakes. And that's going to be the theory part, or the looking at what do we have here and why is it important. And then, as I promised you, we're going to have a live implementation of the solution, and that's going to be done by Niels. And we'll dive right in. So part one, digitization in everyday work, why that matters. We're going to be talking about it now. And we've done a little bit of research, 100%. So all people of all industries, I should say, receive or perceive digitization as a burden, right? So it's more workload, it's more thinking, it's more adapting that's happening in everyday life in 100% of industries. And the majority, 74% of employees complain that they cannot influence, that they cannot do anything about how the company uses technology in order to have an answer for digitization. And that's obviously a problem. And 50% of people say that their workload has increased, not because of digitization itself, but because that answer to digitization has not been good enough in their business. Okay, this is the outset. That's what we want to change. So your existing software cannot usefully map all the processes and workflows that you're managing. What are you trying to do when that happens? You're obviously trying to get help, and ideally you'll get somebody to build you a solution. That's this genius software developer that hopefully can build you what you need, can adapt your digital process to the process as it is now, as opposed to before, and try to help you to work better. What that means is, obviously, this is going to take some time, often months. And when you're then looking at the solution, you might even still have adaptation requests, and it might not be what you need exactly. And of course, it's going to cost some money. Often these custom solutions cost a lot of money. Some of you guys will have been in this position where you've had to make this decision and found that it's quite expensive to get help in order to adapt your digital process. What you're going to do in this moment is obvious. You're going to try to see what standard software solution can help you avoid the problem of this lengthy and cost-intensive solution. You're going to be looking at, of course, some of the standard software that we have. Excel, and that has an advantage. Excel has an advantage because most of us know how to use it. There's a very low barrier to enter and to start using it as kind of like to organize data and to do something with your data, to use it for your process and try to get some data management, some process management out of the software. And the costs are actually manageable, right? We all have, assumably, we all have a license, and we can start right away. And each of us can do it ourselves. We don't need an expert. We don't need somebody who's trained in the specific software to help us with the exporting of data, with report building, this kind of thing. We can do it ourselves. That's obviously advantages, and there's limits too. And the limits are, you want to connect different databases. You want to connect different sheets with each other, have them automate in some form, and do something with your data. And as we probably all know, there's huge limits to that in Excel. We also want to detect duplicates automatically, which is a huge, we can avoid mistakes that way, right? A huge advantage in terms of making mistakes, avoiding mistakes, and having an easier workflow. And then true collaboration of your database. So you want to talk to the person in the next department as easily as you would talk to the person right next to you in your department. You don't want to have that silo structure, you know, bridge this gap and use the software to communicate. You don't want to speak between softwares because your department across the hall has a different software, right? True collaboration. All of these things are a little tricky with Excel. And this is our conclusion here. Excel is not sufficiently scalable. So you're a doer, you're a problem solver, you're ready to adapt your process to what you need these days as opposed to the past. And Excel does not help you efficiently to do that, to adapt your process and to reduce typical errors. Okay, so what you're gonna do is most likely you're gonna look at other standard software across the spectrum. You'll have ERP systems, and of course they have advantages. That's why we have them. And again, it's a standard software, so it's used by your clients, it's used by your team. Therefore, it's widely available. You have a large range of modules, of course. So you have tools at your disposal, a wide range of it. They are not necessarily custom, but there's a lot you can choose from. And that's basically, that's great for starters. And the usability is quite known, right? So again, it's something that you have access to. However, we have some limitations here too. If we look at modern workflows and what we want to do in our processes. First of all, you want to access your data at any time and any place. Imagine you're walking into your logistics department or procurement, and you want to just take a digital device and have the same data right here in front of you, synced in real time that you have on your desktop computer in your office. Edge computing. For some of those that don't know the terminology, that's what you want to be able to do, and ERP systems are usually not capable of that. You want to create reports instantly. Often, especially with the big providers, you need experts to build your custom reports, but you want to, let's say 15 minutes before the meeting, you get new data in, and that data is vital to present to your team or maybe your managers. And you want to just export that right away in the form that you desire to present it, and you want to do it in the last minute, and that's usually not possible. And these people that help you create reports, they have a pretty big hourly rate, so you want to avoid these aspects. And you want to feed data into your database from any source. Again, ERP systems aren't great at that. You have limitations here, but you want to use data from any source that you can imagine to really build a digital workflow. I'm sure you can imagine for your specific case what that means. Again, here, the conclusion is ERP systems aren't flexible enough, right? They have a large range of models, but we can adapt them to our needs, to a very fast-paced and very dynamic workflow design. And people like yourselves who want to do that, who want to be able to flexibly adapt it, you cannot use this software, the standard software, in the most useful way. This is where low code and no code comes in, right? This is where you suddenly start to change or to see changes in how software is designed and how you are actually turning, how you're made capable to be that doer, to be that problem solver, and not limited by software anymore. So from now on, so there's a turning point right now, and from now on, all you need is ideas, because you can create your workflow as you want it, with imagine it like Lego pieces where you use the modules that you need and you create your own workflow in a very short time with very low costs, and often in a much more capable way than you were previously able. And what this really means is, look at the background of the slide here. You want to connect everything in the organization in a way where you can use the data from anywhere and link it together, automate processes, reduce time spent organizing things, and get more out of the data that you have available. And that obviously without removing the software that you're already using, without removing ERP systems or Excel, for example, because you're obviously relying on the data that's in there, but you're connecting them and you're now pulling more out of your data than previously. So as your process changes, you're able to change your workflow as well. And you don't need anybody else to do it. No request, no big budgets. You can start right away. Let's look at this graphically. So what we just talked about last 10 minutes is essentially what's on this graphic. You have 2 dimensions, easy data use and functionality. Of course, easy data use is what Excel is really strong in, right? So you can start right away and you can input your data. The problem is Excel is not great in functionality. ERP systems are amazing at functionality, but they're not very easy to use, right? You need others and often it takes time. And what I just said to you is you want to increase your capability and you want to do this. You want to get in between them and pull the best out of both of these dimensions and maximize functionality and data use. And you want to do it yourself, right? So you can see with these arrows, there's an exchange going on. And this is really what empowers you. So digitization in the core essence of the word is what low code and no code is giving you. This is a little summary of what we've talked about with regards to Excel, right? You want to connect data intelligently, detect duplicates, and enable true collaboration. And then in terms of your ERP system, this is again the summary. Edge computing is so important these days. You want to create reports in an instant, and you want independence from platform independence. You want to input data from any source. This is what you're capable of doing now with the help of low code and no code software. Let's move on and look at the third part of this presentation, which is the 3 examples that we have in order to show you how it's enabled other people to improve their processes. This is Michaela Klein. She's head of compliance management in a large technology firm, and she's had this challenge. So she has a lot of legal norms that get updated quite frequently. And there was a newsletter that used to be sent out in the past that would communicate these updates of norms, of legal norms, that obviously needed to be implemented right away so that the firm would comply. And you can very likely imagine in your own case, you're subject to norms and legal requirements. There's not a lot of way that you can move. You just have to comply, and these need to be updated instantly, and they need to be updated accurately. So you can't have many mistakes. And what this meant was there was a lot of diving into data by a lot of people to take out the right norm for the right department and update the norms over and over and over. And it wasn't very efficient. And it was done with a lot of updates on a lot of sides of the databases. Now, streamlining was the key here. So it was all about finding a way to communicate with one change through one area, and then output the changes to the respective departments with as little effort as possible. And so it was done with these 3 modules, right? There's the compliance management, the employee management, and the product management module of Ninox that were combined. So 3 databases combined in order to then output a solution that could do exactly that. And so what happened was, now there was one source of information, and it intelligently distributed the updates to the respective departments Now, nobody needed to go through all of the updates. The solution output automatically the right norm, the right update for the right norm for the right department, basically with one click. And this is above 150 of these changes per year. And you can imagine what that means if there's a 60% or more time saving, what that means in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of avoiding errors and mistakes, right? So this is example one, and now we're going to move over to a little bit of a different area. This is Christian Licht. He's a sales director of a medium-sized medical technology producer. And so his challenge was that he has, on the sales side, there's 20,000 different products that were in the past put into Excel and then communicated, obviously, by the sales team to the clients. Now, because it was so many, the company tried to use some scripts in order to automate the update of information a little bit. But whoever's used some scripts in Excel knows that there's limits, right? There's limits and there's frustrations that come with that. And basically, this is a question about customer centricity, right? How accurately and how speedily can I get recent information, updated information to my clients and make sure that what I tell them, what I promise them is actually accurate at all times. And with this number of products, 20,000, that becomes a huge challenge. And the solution was to put a product database, a document management, and a lead management together. Again, automate the update mechanism and let these databases speak to each other, something that Excel, for example, can't do, as we learned earlier. And the output was this. These 150 employees that work in the sales department, they now had an efficient way of updating information. They had especially a reliable way. So they basically knew that the data they had in front of them was always accurate, right? They didn't overpromise. They didn't have to check back. They didn't have to look into their files if they had the most recent version. This is the guaranteed data congruence, right? And a time saving of more than 35%. That's huge. And you can see with the statement that the customer proximity and the reduction of errors is obviously a big deal for this company and for the loyalty that they receive from their clients. Okay, and then we have another example before we move on into the practical part with Niels. This is Oliver Prinz, and he's a head of controlling in a small firm that does essentially reading of meters. So imagine there's meters of machinery that needs to be documented every now and then, and there's somebody that comes into this business or home and goes in. You can imagine it like a heating system that has a meter on it, and it needs to be documented. And that clearly is an intrusion to the client space. So you want to minimize this time where you take away time and attention from the client. And also the process of reading a meter was previously not digital at all. And that meant, first of all, it took more time than it needs to because it wasn't efficient. And it was prone to errors. Imagine a paper document that was filled out paper and pen, and then it was transferred to an Excel sheet. And then, back at the office, that person would process the data further. And what the solution gave them was this. So there's an order management module combined with a digital meter reading, and then a mobile data entry, like an iPad, that can easily be configured. And that's the edge computing I mentioned earlier. That's revolutionary here, right? So you have about 6,600 meters per year. And the use of digital technology alone reduced the reading, the errors, the mistakes, while taking data by 90%. That's already huge. But also you can imagine the person entering the data can use the data or can at least send the data right away for processing right away, right? He or she is reading the meter, and as the data is uploaded, the colleague at the headquarters can already do something with the data. That's obviously huge for speed and customer centricity again. And there was a time saving of over 50% for this company. And it was a true example of digitizing a process that was previously lengthy and prone to errors. Okay, let's take a breath. This is the third example. Now you've gotten a little bit of an idea what's possible and how businesses are already using. Maybe you've gotten some ideas how this transfers into your business, what's possible. And because we don't want to stop here, now you have a chance to look into the software, to look how it's being used with a concrete example that Niels is going to give us. And before we do that, I just want to reiterate the point. You're a doer, right? You're a problem solver. Your ideas can now be put into a software right away with very low barrier to enter in terms of price, with very low barrier to enter in terms of flexibility or speed. And then you can, like it says here, achieve new goals together. This is a summary slide. You can take a screenshot. You can also look at this later when you look at when you do a rewatch of the uploaded version of this webinar. And with that, I want to say thank you first of all, and also pass on to Niels, who's going to walk us through the practical part.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, as always, it's a great presentation to give us the basics to understand kind of what, or to give us the context rather for the practical part that we will be looking at now. So what we will be doing is we're going to build a quick and small CRM with all the basic functionality you need. So you will have clients, you will have your employees, and you will have your deals that you can that you have in the system, and that you will have obviously in a digital form to use for your processes in a dynamic way. So we're going to start from zero and build everything custom. I would say I'm going to share my screen, and we can take a look at Ninox. So right here, this is the Ninox team view that we have. So basically important is that here we can see who has access to a given database or to multiple given databases. So you can see here we have all team members. For example, in this community database, this community hero workshop team, it's me and the Ninox support who are part of this team. And each team member can have different roles, as you can see here, owner, admin, right? There's also different roles that can be defined. So editor, this one is a custom role called new. You can define as many roles as you'd like. And in the database, then set different rights per table, per field for each role. What that means basically is that we have the possibility to have an access right management, which obviously in a business context is very important to have. That being said, I will not go too deep into the details of that. We're going to start with a fresh new database. So we're going to create a new database. You can see there's a bunch of templates that definitely recommend using. If you have a use case that fits into one of these, see for us, want to see how we build something from scratch. So we're going to select an empty database, and we call this CRM not in April, CRM June English, and we're gonna give it a small little icon, maybe it is, and we can also set a color, which is obviously very important, core functionality. So we have the empty database. You can see it shows up in the list in here. So we're gonna open it. And we can see this is basically the empty view. Before I start creating tables, quick aside. First of all, as Alex mentioned in the beginning, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. I will go, or we will go through all the questions at the end and answer all of them. And also, if you want access to this database, you can write an email to support@ninox.com. Just let them know that you're coming from the Hero Workshop, and they will invite you to this community team so you can download the database, play around with it, use it in your own team or for your own applications that you want to build. That being said, let's get started with a new table, obviously. So tables, see kind of the defining set of the database. So basically what what that means is that each entity, to use a little bit of a database language, what this means is each kind of actor, so to say, has their own table. So we have a table for companies, we have a table for employees, and we have a table for deals. And these tables, as Alex mentioned in the presentation, get linked together to form a database model to kind of obviously follow these advantages that we have within this structure compared to something like Excel. We're going to start with companies. Obviously, this table also could be clients if we had a B2C CRM. In our case, it's a B2B CRM. So we're going to focus on companies. We're going to create some fields. So on the right side, when I use drag and drop here, these are all the different field types. You can see there's a bunch of different fields. For us, important is obviously a text field for the company name, which is obviously text. We want to use the location field, maybe to have the complete location in the database, maybe an email, as well as a phone number to contact them, for example. We can save this, and the companies table shows up in the list here. You can open it, and this is the table view that gets opened by default. This is kind of akin to what you would see in Excel, for example, where you just have a table and all the data is just in a table format. What's different here than something like Excel is that you can customize this view, so you can easily drag and drop the different columns, and you can also hide or show different columns. So you're a lot more flexible in here, but kind of the general concept still stands. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new record with this plus in here, and we can see a form opens. This has been created automatically, so you didn't see me create this. And this is kind of the first main differentiation from something like Excel, where I don't have to enter the data in a table format. I can enter it in a form. And an additional advantage of this is that I can customize this form. So for example, we can use a layout element from here and, for example, add something like a header. So I'm just gonna put company information in here. Oops, that's not how you write information. Just put it at the top, and maybe we can shrink the email field, but we want the location field to be a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna do that, and maybe we want a space after the company name. So we're just gonna add this just to format this form a little bit to make it more readable, make it more friendly to use. So actually, let me put the company name in the middle a little bit. Now, you can see I'm no designer, but I hope the point got across. We're gonna enter some data in here. So, for example, something like sample Inc. Just me not being very creative, just putting a random phone number, and we're gonna go, for example, sample.com. And then we have this location field. It's a neat little feature. We have a Google Maps view within Ninox, within the location field, and you can either kind of go like you would go on Google Maps and just scroll around and look for a location. You can see, for example, maybe they are in New York, but I can obviously also search for Manhattan, for example, and just kind of go directly in here, and then maybe they share a building with Chick-fil-A. So that's our first company in here. Let's add another one just to have two in here to be able to show things a little bit better. Maybe we can call this the test company. Let's also say they're in the US. Let's give them a random phone number. And let's go info@test.com, for example. And also here, let's maybe go with Los Angeles, down here, and then we're gonna select just a location somewhere, and you can. So obviously you can also search for businesses. You can also search for addresses directly. Since these are fictional companies, we don't have an address for a company to look for specifically. So, quick mental break. First entity, first table is done. We have our companies. We entered some data in here. So these are the companies we will be doing business with. So these could be leads. These could be existing business partners. These are basically companies I want to link to deals, I want to link to employees of some sort. Let's continue. Obviously, we need our table, and the second part is about the employees. So we're going to create a table named employees and give it obviously also a small icon. We use this, and now we add the employee information. What is different for this table than for others is that we have an Excel spreadsheet already. We have an Excel spreadsheet that holds all our employees' information. Obviously, very common, right? I had the information somewhere, so I don't want to copy paste every single entry into my database. That seems not very efficient. So what we're going to do is we're going to import it. First thing we will do is we will create a table, again with text fields, and the mobile field, we have the first and last name, then we have the mobile and the mail of the employee. Obviously, this is just kind of small example. Obviously, it could be many more fields. And also, as you will see in a second, the spreadsheet we will import is obviously also quite small, which just to show kind of the general concept behind it. So we can select import data. And sorry, I don't go too quick. So you have this wheel at the top with all sorts of different options or stuff like exporting for us. Import, so this is the important one, and we will select employees from the our employee spreadsheet. In our case, our employee CSV, which you can create just by saving as in Excel, and you can just drag and drop it from your folder in here. Now we have some options. Usually the standard options are fine to roll with. In our case, since we made it, since we converted it in Excel to a CSV file, for some of the people watching what might be interesting, the separator needs to be changed to a semicolon. That's just an Excel thing, which we need to kind of deal with. You can see the fields were automatically matched with the fields from our spreadsheet, since they have the same name, right? First name gets matched to first name and so on. So we can just continue with next, and we have the kind of an overview of how it will be imported. You can see that the mobile apparently did not work out very well. Well, that's something that is bound to happen with Excel sometimes, where it just converts the mobile into a different format. For our case, I will say, let's just roll with it for now. Obviously, the actual mobile number would look like this. So also, didn't show, let me quickly just adjust the form, make it a little bit more readable. So we have the employee information in here. Right. So we just imported our data from Excel into Ninox, and now we have all our employees in here. Great. Now there's one entity or one important part obviously missing, and that's deals. So you want to know what we're going to sell, how much, or rather, how much the deals are worth that we are making. So let's create a new table called deals. And again, we drag some fields in. So maybe we give a deal ID as a text field. So we can also use something like a letter in the ID. In addition, we can obviously add the deal amount. And in addition to the deal amount, we want a date, when we did the deal, and also we want something like a deal status telling us how far along we are in our process. This deal status, just to linger on it for a second, is a choice field, which means I can add predefined choice values. So I'm just clicking on the field, and this kind of menu opens where I now can add some choice values. So for example, initializing, offer sent, and we can go closed won or closed lost. This obviously is a very simplified way of doing things. you can add the options that are relevant for your own process, right? If you have maybe 3 offer stages, you could have the 3 offer stages. If you have kind of a first call, second call, you can obviously add all of these different choices to really know how far along your specific process this deal is. I'm just adding some small icons here. So these are the same icons that are also available for the tables. We have a lot of different options. Close one, maybe go with a check mark, and close last with that X. And we can also set a default. So in our case, if you want to default to initialize. Also another default, just to add this real quick, is the date. Obviously, we don't want to enter today every day, or every time we create a new record. And kind of chances are that the deal was initialized when we created the record. So we can take this as our default, and we can save this. Great. We have a deals table, similar as before. Just gonna go into here and add a header real quick, information. We drag this so it's a little bit more visually appealing. And we can already see the defaults setting themselves, so the date and the deal status are set. One thing, quick thing I will do. So if we add, for example, 1,500 as a deal amount, we maybe want currency associated with it or just a number format. So we can also add this. You can add a custom one or just select one from the list. Maybe you can work in euro. So let's add euro as our format. You can see it says 1,500 euros. So that's a lot more clear for us looking at it. All right. We have companies, we have employees, and we have deals. Perfect, right? Obviously, there's one kind of important part missing. We don't know the deal, for example, for which company is it, or from an employee, we don't know which deals the employee is associated with which companies and employees responsible for. So all of this is seemingly missing, or is missing, and now we kind of come into the one of the main important concepts in Ninox, or that also Alex talked about in the presentation, which is intelligently linking data. So we have to throw another database kind of rule in here. Each information should only be logged once. Very sensible if you think about it, right? If I have one company, the information from one company in 2 places, I update it in one place, the 2 places are out of sync. I look, I don't know, is it the right information? Is it the old one? So that's the thought behind having everything only once in the database. And the way we accomplished that by still having the linking information is we use the link functionality, and we just select link 2 in our case and just click on companies. So we link one company with a deal, and similarly we select link 2 and select employees. So we select link an employee rather to a deal, and maybe we can add another head and go companies and employees. I'm sure can come up with way better descriptions and names for things. It's obviously just to show kind of the general structure of things. Now we can select a company, say Sample Inc., and say, okay, Sample Inc., this deal for 1,500 euros, which is initializing, is for the Sample Inc. And for example, my employee, Anna de Winter, is responsible for this. Perfect. Some other things we can do with linking is, and obviously this is depending on your company, on your processes, how you want to do things. But just to show some examples, for example, we can link an employee to a company and say responsible employee. Jeez, I can't type today, sorry. So we know who is kind of the contact person for this company. We can say for the sampling, for example, could be Philip Müller. And for the test company, it could be Anna de Winter in our case. What's really interesting, what you could see when I added the deal header, is that the other side of the link is being created automatically, because obviously, for example, if you go in here, we might want to know, okay, this first deal, which company is associated with. We might want to know the other side of the question, right? Which deals did the sample link do? So this gets created automatically, so we know kind of which deals, and we can click on them and land directly into the deal. It's going to hide the column real quick, make it look a little bit better, and do one quick thing which might happen, or at least in my experience happens quite often. Right, we created all this database, and we create the links, and it's all great, but we forgot a field. Right? We forgot the pictures for the employees. We have great pictures from all the employees. We want to have them in database. That's another great advantage that we can use, where we just can create a field after the fact. Right? We can change the structure without kind of getting penalized, as it's kind of standard in many other applications. Penalized in that context means, right, my existing forms break, my existing scripts break, my existing connections break in some form. We can just go ahead, select an image field here, and go make it a little bit smaller. Maybe drag this to the top, and now adjust this a little bit, make this somewhat more readable, and now we can just drag and drop our images. So this for Anna de Winter, we have our image here for Winter Schwarz, and for Philipp Müller as well. So now we also have a picture associated with these names. Okay, great. We have edited our table. This obviously is possible not only with pictures, but with any field type. And also this applies to changing field names, which is also quite important. This might happen. Maybe we will add a quick headers to the connections, maybe hide the AD, which obviously is just a preference thing. Companies as well. So we can save this, and now we have, as you can see, a fairly complete profile of our employees, right? We know which deals they've been associated with, we know which companies they are responsible for. And similarly, for the companies, we have a good idea, on one hand, who is responsible for them, and on the other hand, which deals they are associated with. Similarly, for the deals, we now know which company and which employee is part of which deal. Quick mental break here. This, what we did right now in 20 minutes, is the basic structure of any CRM, right? We could kind of use this and start working, and we would have roughly the information we need, probably add some fields here or there, but kind of the general structure we can use. Nevertheless, there are some things that are a little bit clunky, I would say, right? We have to manually enter deal ID, for example. That's doesn't have to be. Also, as we saw before, for when I create another deal, just put it as closed one. If I select a company, then what I can see is that my employee doesn't get filled automatically, even though I associated an employee to a company, right? So if we let me save this real quick. If we look into a test company, we know Anna de Winter is responsible. So why does Anna de Winter doesn't automatically get filled into the employees? These are some kind of quick things we can kind of glimpse into the automations. I see I'm very bright. It's like the sun is shining on my face. We can have a quick glimpse into automations and kind of see, or at least kind of begin to see what things are possible with scripting and with kind of having all data digitally as well. First thing we would do is the deal ID. That's a very quick thing, also a script that you can then copy for your own databases, definitely. So we will click on edit fields at the bottom. This appears when you're in admin mode, and this gives you the same view that you get when you create a table. So if you remember, that's the same kind of view we saw, just that we have these links that we created after the fact. Now, I didn't talk about this before. You can see this box here. We have kind of two things that are important in this box. One is the triggers. So this is where script gets triggered. And we can say when, right? So trigger on create means when we create a new record. For our case, for the deal ID, that's the right place to be. Trigger after update gets triggered every time we make a change. That could be something like a validation function. So there's the companies with very complex processes, and if you, I don't know, need to validate a number given 5 other parameters, every time you enter this number or you enter any number, you need to do this validation again. Trigger after update is a great place to put this function to do that exact thing. Also, just a quick aside, each field, for example, if you go to deal ID and to more options, has their own trigger after update, which means we can do, which has the same range of scripts. So we can, in different places, run kind of similar code or different code, depending on the behavior we want. Also, a quick aside, the access rights I talked before are here, which are very easy to set. So it's just click, and now only admins can access this table, for example. Let's go back to the deal ID. I clicked here on this trigger on create and got the scripting view from Ninox, which gives me all the fields I have available on the left side and kind of the text box to just work in. So what we'll do is we click on deal ID. We select the 2 dots equals, which means kind of fill this box or fill this field with something. In our case, what we will do is we want to give the deal ID, maybe we want to format D for deal. As I said before, my creativity today is not immense, but I hope this gets the point across. Right, we get deal D for deal, and then what we will do is we use the command number to specify data type is what's called. Basically, what we say is I want this ID. This is an internal Ninox ID, which you saw me hide in a couple tables that gets out automatically, which is always unique. So we don't have to generate a number. We can just use the given ID that's already there, and then we can add something to it. So for example, we can say 10,000 plus the ID. And what we could also do is use the function format to ensure that, for example, it's a 6-figure number, for example. So we just put, yeah, I think I counted right. So I just said 6 figures, but it should start at 10,000 and then count up with the ID. So now every time we create a new record, obviously this doesn't count for old ones, it's trigger on create. So every time we create a new record, this will be executed, and we can see we have, for example, the deal 0, 10,003, 10,004, 10,005. So obviously for the previous ones, since we didn't have the script yet, I will just manually put this in real quick. Let's see if we defined this from the beginning, we would have all the deals kind of connected. So let me use the deal 10,003 to do the second quick script, which is probably easier than the previous one, which fills the employee field depending on the company employee or the responsible employee for the given company that we select. How we will do this is we will go into here and we will use the trigger of the update of the company field because we only want this field to update whenever we select the company, right? So what we will do is we click on employees because this is the field we want to fill. Again, 2 dots equals, and now we can kind of open our links and we can just click on responsible employee. Right, that's it, very quick script. And if we save this, we can see, select sample inc, Philipp Müller gets filled in. If I select the test company, Anna de Winter gets filled in. Let's maybe add some values here as well. It's very quick. Also, maybe a quick aside, you can also unlink, obviously, and manually overwrite this, right? So maybe Günther Schwarz was actually responsible for this deal. But most of the time, it will be the person responsible for the company. So like this, we ensure that only in very few cases we have to actually manually do something, and most of the time, it just automatically works. That's kind of the first look into automations. As a last thing before we jump into the questions, I will show you a little bit of data aggregation, which is obviously very important. So the data aggregation refers to questions like, how much revenue has, for example, Anna de Winter brought in? It's a very fair question. There's multiple ways to kind of get this information. The easiest one is, since we have this table here, right? We have a table with all the deals. See, this is where we also hold the information, how much revenue. We can just click on the deal amount, and we can see we have all these different functions. We can say average, so we know how much a deal was on average, but we can, in our case, sum, as we want to know in total how much revenue potentially has she brought in. In our case, initializing and offer sent are the deal statuses. Maybe we don't want to know the initializing deals because they're not kind of sure bets, but we want to know offer sent and closed won. So we just filter. So again, let me show that again. If you click on deal status, you have this filter where you can just select the options you want to get displayed. And now we can see in total for Anna de Winter, it's 15,000. For Günther Schwarz, he has 0 deals that fit these criteria, so it's 0. And for Philipp Müller, it's the same. But if we remove the filter, we can see there's one deal worth 96,000, which is in the status initializing. I don't know if we would set this to close one, for example, and reset the filter. Now we can see he has a total of 96,000 that he brought in for the company. That's kind of the first way we can do things. The other way, just to show you real quick, is the formula. So this is kind of the same view you saw in the triggers after update, right? You're going to create on the table, just that it's, in our case, just a field that gets filled with information based on a script. So in our case, very simple. We just use the sum function. We just open the deals and we say, oops, don't sum deal status. That doesn't make too much sense. Sum deal amount. And now we can say total deal amount, right? And we just have it as a field. So we don't have to kind of fiddle around with the table. We just have it in here and we can just glance at it, even if we have just completely different filters that's kind of independent from this table. We just have, or if we average, for example, in the table, we still have the total deal amount in our field in here. So to recap what we saw, we started kind of with an empty database. We briefly looked at the team, but we started creating a companies table, employees table, deals table, which hold all the different entities or all the different kind of actors, information types, you could say, that are relevant for us. And then we started filling it with information. We imported a CSV that holds the employee information. We then added later a field that we forgot in our process, which is the image. And then we started linking the field. So we linked deals to employees and to companies. We linked companies to employees to hold various types of information while still only having one place where this kind of information is initially. So if we change something in the employees table, it will reflect in the whole database and we don't have to kind of go around all different deals changing. So for example, if Günther Schwarz were to marry and his name would change, this information would be displayed everywhere and wouldn't be kind of limited to the one place we change it. Then we had a quick look at automations. So we checked the deal IDs, or we created a quick script to automatically create deal IDs, and we created a quick script, a very small script, to link the employee to automatically link an employee within a deal that is linked to a company. These are also scripts that you can use for your own databases, right? Especially the deal ID, but also this linking thing, something that is very often, or that's relevant very often. So definitely feel free to just copy paste that and just basically change the field names to your own field names that you have. I would say, let's have a look at the question. I can see there's a couple questions already. The first question in the Q&A section from Anonymous is, can I filter all companies in a specific city later? Yeah, that's definitely possible. To give you a quick pointer, you can get the location in a formula field, which gives you the text of the location, right? So with this text, you can say, okay, I want to use something like contains. Oops, maybe else. So you don't give, obviously every field needs to have their own or their unique name, so we can't have two fields named location, but if we have, for example, location text in our table, we can search for New York and only have companies from New York, for example. So, next question is from Eric. Hi, I've built one database and one view about GPS truck data. I wanted the team list on the right to display only employees belonging to the same company. Is that possible by sharing the same database and its view? So there's two, oh, sorry, there's actually more, so let me read the full question first. The database receives GPS data from trucks of different companies, right? And the question two, building on that, is how does one set up an Integromat webhook module to send data using a webhook between Integromat and Ninox? And there's a third question, but let me first answer the first two. So first of all, depending on what you're referring to, there's different ways of doing things. So if you want the team list, so if you go back, kind of this team list here, if you want that to be hidden, you can just contact support at ninox.com. They will help you to, or basically in the backend, they will just disable the team members to be visible as it is here actually. So we have already community members in the Hero Workshop community team, but for data protection reasons, obviously we don't want to display everyone's information in this team. So that's why we've hidden all the different team members. So that's definitely possible. The other kind of way this might be relevant is if you have something like an employees table and you only want employees to see employees within their own company. That is also possible. There's different ways of doing this. You could either kind of lock the whole table. Obviously, that's kind of easy way to go. There is also this readable if. So what you could do, which is very practical, is to link. So there's this Ninox user field here, which you can use. Or you can link a Ninox user to a specific employee. And then you can use readable if to filter by linked company, for example. And the Integromat webhook module, there is a great Integromat support article. So if you Google Integromat Ninox webhook, there is a script that you can copy paste that you can put into the trigger after update section. Replace the URL within that script with your own Integromat webhook URL. And whenever you update, or you can also put it in a button or wherever you like the script to run, basically. And whenever you execute a specific function, it will send the data to the to Integromat to be processed further. To go into this very deeply would, I think, be below too much for this context. I recommend to either keep an eye out for the integration webinars that are, I think, monthly, if I'm not mistaken, or there's the open support hour, I think it's called in English, where you can also ask your questions to the support team, or obviously always write an email to support@ninox.com. And question 3 is, how do I set up a small window to display a map? As of now, I can only use the open URL, which opens a full screen window from the latitude and longitude coordinates. This also would be a little bit too much for this context here, but it's definitely possible. So to give you a quick pointer, you would use a formula field. Since a formula field can hold an iframe where you can just display any website, basically. So you would use that to get or display a website which holds a map, for example. Also, I would refer you to probably the integrations webinar, or you can have a look at the Webinar DE 2021 team. If you write an email to support at Ninox, they will invite you. If you just let them know, hey, I would like to be part of the Webinar 2021 team, there are some databases in there who have exactly that use case. So you can just download them, play around with it, and enter your own information and use those. Can I pull, as Rob asked, can I pull data from database to be presented on a website? That is possible. Again, multiple options, as kind of the theme in these questions and answers. Option one is to use a built-in Ninox function, which is called a share view. So you can say share this view, you activate sharing, and you have all these different options. We can say I want an HTML, or I want a PDF that gets downloaded, I want an Excel, CSV, whatever. You just use the HTML. And then you have this public URL with the sharing information in there, but you can also get a PDF, and then if you open this, it's in a PDF format. So that's definitely the easy way to go. The other way would be to use an API of some sort to kind of pull the data out with a service like Integromat, for example, and put them into a different format if you wanted, for example, to create a PowerPoint automatically or Word automatically. These are things that you can do with APIs depending on your use case. Catherine asked, I'd love to have greater flexibility over where images are placed, for example, to the right of the screen. I can't find a way to do that. Is there time, is there a way to do that? If it's not possible in the moment, is there a way it is likely to be in the future? Yeah, it is not possible at the moment. So it's not just you. It is very likely that in the future we'll be able to do this. So there is, the development team is working on having different ways of scaling and layouting forms in particular. Although I ask you to be patient with this, the development team has a lot on their hands at the moment, obviously. So I can't give you a precise roadmap for that, but it is something that has been talked about. Alan asks, is there a way to create a blank empty image and place it to the left? Oh, there is a way, create a blank empty image and place it to the left of the image you want to display. Yeah, that's very true. Alan, that I did not think about. You could definitely do that and just have empty images or have even a formula field holding empty images and then just place your image to the right. That's a great input from Alan. We have another question in the Q&A section from Simon. And it is, how can you change the format of the date field? For example, changing it to the American style from the German style. So referring to this date field. So what you have here is the function show as, where you can format your date. So there's a format function, it's called. You can find it in the manual. And with that, you can display not only different formats, but also only a month or only a day, only a year, which might be very useful. Yeah, so I hope that.
Doesn't it also adapt with language automatically?
Oh yeah, thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, definitely. So depending on which language you are set, it will automatically change. So if you have, for example, set German, it will select the German date field or date format. If your region is the US, should switch to the US date field. For example, for me, I have a German, an English, or I've set Ninox to English rather, so I have the British date format in my case by default. Eric asked, would Ninox offer mailbox to receive emails directly in Ninox and process data is set on the roadmap. So I don't think a inbox kind of within Ninox to receive is directly on the roadmap, but there is already kind of possibilities to implement that use case. So kind of the main point I would give you is to Integromat. Probably Integromat is your best bet to doing these types of things. Obviously, you can play around with just scripting an API yourself, which isn't kind of sounds harder than it is. Once you kind of get used to it a little bit. Integromat has modules like, for example, a Gmail module, which can check if you receive emails and then just enter them into the Ninox database. So that's kind of the very quickest way to do this, and it's fairly easy. So what you would do is you would just go into Integromat, select the Gmail module, log in with your Gmail account, select the trigger, receive an email, and then just build a quick flow to your Ninox database, which just for people who don't know how to add this, when you are in Integromat, you can add your Ninox API key to the tool, so to Integromat, and then you can just select your database, select the table you want to add it, use the create record module for Ninox, and kind of check emails, I think it's called, for Gmail, if you have Gmail, or there's also just a custom SMTP module, as well as for other services, for I believe for Outlook as well, for example, and then you can just have in a couple minutes build a quick flow that has exactly that functionality. I think we got all the questions, if I'm not mistaken. Have I missed something? Then, oh yeah, see one thing, Alan says for web versions, your browser date time determines the Ninox date format. Yeah, that's right. Just to reiterate what we talked about before. So if you change your browser location, or just the date time setting directly, which usually are kind of interchangeable, it will also change the Ninox date time format. Okay. Then I think.
Amazing. Thank you so much for showing everything, Niels. That was great as always. And I always learn a little bit each time. It's usually something new. Sometimes you repeat something that I've forgotten for quite a while, but I'm fairly new to it. So I'm hope you learned as much or more as I did. And thank you for making the time. Thank you for your interest. And as we said earlier, find the resources to ask more questions and the formats that we have in place. Also, thank you for your feedback in terms of the timing of this. And we're always trying to optimize and make it better. And with that, thanks for your time. Good luck implementing, and see you at the next one.
See you at the next one. Goodbye.